talk. Well, good afternoon. Bonjour, comment ça va, vous autres? Ça va? C'est assez chaud pour vous autres? C'est chaud comme la Louisiane. Well, it's a pleasure to be here and be able to play with these great musicians here and trying to figure out what the hell Francophone fiddle is all about. That's not a commencement word. I know somebody just got. She didn't graduate because she said hell in the thing. You heard about that? But that would be like nothing in Louisiana. But anyway, yeah, whatever that is. But you know, it's interesting term, Franco-American. You know, the obviously it's got some French, and obviously it's got some Americans. Well, from this side, and we can all talk about that from our point of view. You know, we were French in Louisiana because, you know, the way you survived in Louisiana was to be able to speak French and know the land and farm and hunt and make a living and just go on. I mean, you know, we talk about a long time ago, we talk about the grand dérangement, the gigantic diaspora where they rounded up Acadians, about 10,000 of them, and you know, took over their homelands, etc., and put them into the four winds all along the eastern seaboard, believe it or not. And both sides of my family actually were sent to France, and they didn't really like it. And they ended up in Louisiana. About 1,200 Acadians were in Louisiana. We've been there ever since. The language has been very strong too, and it was along with the music. And in fact, it was so. My grandparents, you know, my grandfather was in World War I in France, and so he had a good time, and my grandmother was a nurse, and they still used to say, "Oh, il parle américain." You know, when somebody spoke English, it was like that was still a different world. And it recently changed. I'd say it changed, you know, began changing in the 50s and the 60s, and then it's become a lot different. But, you know, then the word corrupts, you know, because you say Cajun, Acadien becomes Cajun and all that. So that like takes over a whole vast area of southwest Louisiana. Even in southwest Louisiana, we don't have civil parishes. With civil counties, we have civil parishes, and there's about 64 of them, 22 of which had French-speaking people. And in the census in 1970, they said there's over 1 million French-speaking people in southwest Louisiana. When they did that census in 2000, there were less than 100,000. So, So we give our music a little French flair, and you know, we still play old-time music, and we just call it, I mean, you know, we used to call it old people's music, to tell you the truth. Music of viol, and we were young, so we could make fun of them. Now it's a whole different story. But anyway, and so that's about Louisiana. But I'll come back to me, you know, when we go on, I'll take any questions or whatever. But so I'd like for Daniel to play stuff, and then Don, and we'll talk about how they experienced it, what actually, you know, music was growing up, and how it's different, and why are we here?
Well, yes. Being Franco-American, I was born in Bristol, Connecticut, and my parents actually come from Quebec, and they settled down in Connecticut. My father had come down for the construction. In the 60s and 70s, it was past the working in the shops. Now the Canadians were coming down. You had your carpenters, your sheetrockers, and all sorts of stuff. So, and my father, is because of my father that both of my parents that I speak French, but that for my father, who's also a musician. He was accordion and harmonica player. And so I grew up listening to French Canadian folk music, and that's why it's so heavily ingrained in me. And finally I became a fiddle player. Started off with spoons and then moved on to fiddle, and not too many other instruments after that. But the point that we should probably press on is the Franco-American. You know, for me growing up in Connecticut from Quebecois parents, and it was always French in the house. And when we went out, it was English. And if we came back home and were speaking English in the house, our father would be upset because he would want us to be speaking French. You know, that could be spoken outside. If we're to keep this language, then we're going to speak French in the house. And when we didn't, well, we knew because he was awfully quiet for the rest of the night. So, and what else can I say? I think I just lost my point there. Anyway,
Play it too.
Yeah, I should probably just play it too. Yes. not only did I get a chance to play with my father, but there's a lot of French Canadian fiddle players, musicians in Connecticut growing up, and there's still much of them around today, some of which are with us here today, all the way up from Connecticut. So it's great to have friends here, Monsieur Beaucoin, and accordion player. So here's a tune that my father plays on harmonica, Lake Saint Jean Reel, the Rille du Lac Saint-Jean. Hopefully I can remember that. Wow, geez, was that a good choice?
All across the country, and I found out that it wasn't, and that the music we played was indigenous to our region and a few other spots in small areas in the world. And so, you know, a light kind of came on and took a little more importance to it. So I spent a lot of time extracting tunes out of my uncle and that my grandfather used to play, and I'm going to play three of them for you right now that we call the first one Pepe's Reel, because a lot of these tunes didn't have names. You know, you'd go to home and you'd say, "Hey Joe, you know that tune that goes da 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 da?" "Oh yeah," I said, "but I do it," and off we go, you know, like that. And so we had to call it something when we recorded it, so we called it Pepe's Reel. And then the second tune I found out came from an old Scottish archive, but it got kind of distorted after a night of drinking slosh and trying to remember that tune the next day with no tape recorders or anything to help you along. And it's called The Fisherman's Reel. Sort of. And the last one was another one of my grandfather's tunes called Joe Matthews.
happy music. It's just joyful, happy music. Now the stuff with the feet, I don't know. That never got down there, you know, because, you know, it's dusty today. That's why I think we don't do that, because it's so dusty in Louisiana. You know,
That's what I hear coming down the aisle when I don't put the seat down.
Oh. Whatever. And, but that brings to mind some songs. You know, there's not too many reels in our music. They were usually, it was around when our music was first commercialized or for RCA Victor. They went out and they had contests, and the winners of those contests went to New Orleans and made records. 78, as we know. And there was only a couple of fiddlers who played reels. So I like to do maybe 3 of them, like you did. This was from Dennis McGee, and it doesn't sound very French. Dennis McGee was born in around the 1890s. He never spoke English to me. And he lived to be 90-something. Nobody really knew how old he was. And he was quite a character. He recorded in the 20s, and then he played with a black accordion player by the name of Amadou Ardouin, which their music, they recorded some maybe 30 tunes. About 28 of those tunes are still in the Cajun repertoire and Zydeco repertoire today. So he was a character. I used to go visit him in his house. He lived at 857 St. Joseph Street in Eunice. And he had just a regular house. He was a barber. You see what he did to my hair, you know. But he was a barber, really bad barber. Yeah. And there was this gigantic oak tree in the front of the house. That, you know, I don't know if, you know, we have oaks here, but these are black oaks. I mean, the girth is amazing, and it was like pulling up the sidewalk. So I said, you know, and it's close to the house. And I said, so Dennis, why'd you build your house so close to the tree? He said, I planted that tree. That's how old he was. Excuse me. I used to say, Dennis, I can't get this song, you know, and he said, and there was no like showing, you just play the song, we go there. And I recorded some 157 tunes and then left my recorder at home and never worried about it again. And of course, he'd come up with a tune every time I go. But his, he was quite a character. And anyway, this is a couple of his tunes and another tune by a guy by the name of Wayne Perry, who lived in Indian Bayou, or as we say, Bayou Sauvage. So this is kind of rare in Cajun music, but I figure I'd start with that. But I can't do that with my feet, you know, not yet. But there's another little trick to my feet that I will do when I do a waltz. You know.